Hey everybody, I'm Madeline Sklar, host of the Social ROI Chat. I am here with our special guest today. Please welcome Heidi Cohen. Hey Heidi.
Welcome. I'm here from New York.
Yeah, you were just amazing on the chat. Oh my gosh, everybody was loving your answers. You were sharing so much great advice and insights and tips. So now we get to have you share your expanded thoughts. It'll be fun. So before we dive in, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Heidi Cohen. I run the Actionable Marketing Guide. I also have a consulting practice called Riverside Marketing Strategies, where I help marketers with their digital marketing.
Awesome. And you are like the queen of content. I mean, you share so much great stuff. You're always putting things out there that is just so knowledgeable. Like, how did you get started in all that?
Well, let's say in terms of content, because I actually would say I do more about it's content is a vehicle to discuss marketing. But I started, as a matter of fact, I actually started working for a local newspaper at age 18.
Wow.
Yay, Dad. And my last conventional job, I worked for The Economist, and I was head of digital marketing globally. So wow. In between, I've also worked for a number of major marketing companies. So I've worked for Bertelsmann, Citibank, Economist.
That's super cool. So you're very knowledgeable, you know a lot, and it really came through in the Twitter chat. So what I want to do is ask you some of the questions from the chat so you can share more expanded thoughts and not be limited to the 280 characters of Twitter. So this will be a lot of fun. Now, our topic today was content creation for the solopreneur. I love that. We have a lot of solopreneurs in our Twitter chat. So I know they were really digging this. So let's start with question number one. What type of content should solopreneurs create to maximize their visibility on social media, and why?
Okay, I strongly believe, as I said in my tweets, although I guess they didn't have a voice to them or personality, that the biggest thing a solopreneur can do to maximize your reach is to do what I call consistent content. It's one of what I call the 5 types of content. So it's really cyclical content. It means putting out a piece of content every week or every other week. I don't know. Bi-weekly gets people confused. And that can be an email newsletter. It can be a video. It can be a blog post. It can be a podcast, right? The key here is to build up that consistency. You should publish it at the same time, the same day, same time, every single week, or every other week. For example, Ann Handley does this. She's in addition to being the chief content officer for Marketing Props, she's had a massive increase in the number of global speaking engagements she does. So if she can write a bi-weekly newsletter, so can you.
I agree, because she is like traveling constantly. I subscribe to her newsletter. I see her at conferences. I'm always bumping into her. And that lady is like on 24/7, just speaking, traveling, writing. She does it all. And like you said, she puts out this bi-weekly newsletter. So I agree. If she can do it, we all can do it.
Exactly. And I think there's that consistent content, which I talk about, that builds what I call share of audience attention. So it's not the same as share of attention or share of audience. The idea is that you no longer have appointment media. In the old days, you'd watch a TV show at a specific time, or you might have drive time radio, right? Or your magazine may come weekly or monthly, or your newspaper came every morning. So in order to compensate for that, you need the consistent content so that you actually build a longing and desire on the part of your audience, just like the two of us talk about Ann's newsletter, right? When I get that on, there are certain newsletters that I get that I give myself permission to take a break from work and read them. Ann Handley's newsletter is one of them. So that's why you want that consistent content. And, I know a number of people on the chat said, well, I don't have time. My content comes second. No. You've got to understand that it's not just your bit as a solopreneur. You have to think about not just servicing your clients, but also keeping your name out there and top of mind. It doesn't matter it's not a matter of the size of your audience, it's a matter of the quality of your audience. And without continually building the content, which helps, here's the thing, content is what fuels social media. Therefore, without continually fueling and giving people a reason to show up or read your email, read your blog post, listen to your podcast, watch your video, you don't have, you're actually going to do, your content is a flyby. You might as well not invest in it, because if you're going to do mega content, I saw some of the tweets talked about doing what I would call mega content. That's either your crowd pleaser, which you should do once a month. Those are big things. Those are like blog posts and lists or roundups, so that the key there, I call them crowd pleaser for a reason. Everybody likes them. They participate. They share it. And you should take a hint from a cue from Mike Alton of the Social Media Hat and Agora Pulse, who sits on social media for the first day he does it. You reach out to everybody to make sure they're there. But if you don't do that and you don't build up a presence on social media, on secondary platforms like Reddit or Growth Hackers or LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, you're going to have to pay, right? The trade-off as a solopreneur, which most solopreneurs, they treat their money as if it's their own. This is one of those dirty little secrets no one talks about, right? Solopreneurs act like individuals. So the key here is paying yourself first, which everyone tells you to do with the job, by creating this content. And that content should become an annuity and a core asset that you have, right? Having a blog, which I'm a major fan of blogs. Having that blog adds value, creates value. And in the early days, Pamela Wilson has a book that's about to come out where she talks about the different life stages of a blog or creating that content. So up front, it's the consistency that matters. She talks about posting at least once a week. Now, if you look at Andy Crestodina's Orbit Media blog research from 2017, the average blogger posts maybe less than 4 times a month, which means less than once a week. So as my thing is that, as a social media, I guess you can't see me here, I'm like weighing the difference here. You're going to either pay in real money or you're going to pay in time. And you really want that voice of yours to come out. It's much easier to break through.
Yeah, I love this. Such interesting ways of looking at this. I love when you talk about like putting the content out at the same time each week, like with a podcast. There are podcasts I listen to that now I expect, like when Wednesday rolls around, I expect Pat Flynn's podcast to be waiting for me to listen to.
Right. And that's true. That's exactly where they're getting it from, right? It's an old media idea of being consistently there. The other thing is that podcasts, unlike a blog post or putting something up on Twitter, on YouTube, when YouTube has the benefit that it acts like a search engine. It's the number 2 engine after Google.
Right.
Even though it's owned by Google, it's also the number 2. But the key here is that podcasts do not have the same level of metrics. I think that they are personally, I'm a great believer that they're undermeasured. Because unless you use old-fashioned, I'm sorry to interrupt you once. 1 minute, I gotta get that extra benefit here is that podcast, and to try and measure things, you've got to think like traditional media. You have to get you have to give them a call to action that's easy to measure, easy to find. So they remember it because they may be driving or doing something else.
Right. Love that. All right. So let's look at question number 2. There's so many great questions here. It's like hard to choose which ones to talk about. How can solopreneurs maximize their content creation results with limited resources?
Okay, so here's the thing. One of the keys when I talk about limited resources, which this is great because it doesn't fit into a tweet, is limited resources. That doesn't mean zero resources. It means having a process. So if you're doing what I call consistent content, that's your weekly newsletter, weekly or every other week newsletter, a blog post, a podcast, a video. These have a consistent format, just as your Twitter chat has a consistent format. It has 7 questions. They go according to the time. There's interactions, and you have a guest, right? It has a set format. Well, one thing about consistent content is it has a set format, right? For example, Ann Handley in her Total Anarchy newsletter has a letter from Ann. She's got, you get her brand. It feels, even though she's sending it to her 20,000 plus readers, it feels like she wrote for you. And she doesn't has her curated content that follows on. Personally, I do something very similar with my weekly newsletter. For the Actionable Marketing Guide, I write a personal newsletter. It goes out every Monday at noon, and I write a newsletter, and I write it just as if I was writing it, Dear Madeline. And I tell you something cool that happened in New York. It's got a very New York flair. And then I do a pivot to talk about a marketing example. So it's easy. I know that format. And it's fun to write. As I said to my husband recently, unless I have to be in the mood, but there's always something that happens that gives a New York flair. If anyone who knows me, I'm a true New Yorker, and it talks about something in New York, and I say what's happening and how it responds. For example, last week I talked about gridlock, right? The city was totally immobilized by the UN, right? And I talked about how I had to deal with it and what it means for your marketing, because you don't want your marketing to become gridlocked. So
that's cool.
Right. So it's a matter of having a hook. So back to recap, so we can go on to the next question. You want consistent content. For the solopreneur, consistent content actually helps. As I said in the tweet chat, if Ann Handley can do it while she's flying all over the world, and she's running marketing process, and they have a great show next month in San Francisco, you can too. What you need is a consistent format, provides your voice that talks to your specific audience. It's not about numbers. It's a matter of quality.
I love this so much, because now I'm going to start having this thing in the back of my mind. I'm going to hear your voice, Heidi, saying, if Ann Handley can do it, so can you. If Ann Handley can do it, because wow, I love this. You've really inspired me with that. That's super cool.
Yay!
Yay! All right. Question number 3. I love this question. Why is it important for solopreneurs to have a publishing schedule, and what does it mean for their social media marketing?
Okay, so here's the thing. I talked about this at Content Marketing World, where I talked about distribution. And the key here is that your content creation is not necessarily equal to your publication date, right? So it can take you, and this is another thing for non-consistent content, you can time it, right? It could take you 3-4 days to write a great piece of content. So you spread it out, but when you publish it, you want to make sure that you're publishing. Consistent timing is good. The other one is for your mega content. That is your foundational content. It could be research, like I gave the example of Orbit Media, or the Sophisticated Marketer's Handbook. That was the example from Jason Miller of LinkedIn. Those or your monthly piece, you want to make sure that you time those, not because, oh my God, I got to do that. It's like the old fashioned, I got to do it because it's on my calendar. I want to do it because that's the best time to publish. So for example, last year, Steve Rayson of BuzzSumo published a mega piece of analysis on headlines. I could have told you before he ever published it was going to go gangbusters, because headlines are something everybody's concerned with. Well, what did he do? He was in the UK. He said, okay, if I don't publish it soon, everybody's going to be on their, I don't know what they get in Europe, like 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever. They're like on a school schedule. Anyway, so he publishes it the last Monday in June. Well, for people who like us, who either live in the United States or live in Canada, and sorry, no offense to anyone, I worked at The Economist, the biggest population of people who speak English is in the US. Okay, so therefore, you've got to think about where your audience is. So he did it. This piece did 10K and had over 10,000 shares. They made money. It was not intended. It was intended as thought leadership. They made money, but the key here was they got 10,000 shares. It wasn't meant to sell. Steve Rayson was he's British. We don't sell. We're British. But Love him. I love him to death. But anyhow, so as a result, he got 3 shares of full-time of product, which, I mean, not shares, sales, which is amazing, exceeded their cost for the social media advertising. But as soon as you hit Canada Day and 4th of July, boom, your thing is dead. Nobody thinks about it. So that's what I meant, is that if you take it back and you think about, well, okay, I didn't get it done in time. When else is a good time to publish headline data? And maybe it doesn't work during the summer. Maybe you do it right before Content Marketing World, or you do it during Inbound or something like that, when people are talking about these topics. Let me tell you the best part about publication timing. It's free. 0 cost.
You know, I always see really great pieces come out right before big conferences. So you basically, you're saying that's no accident, right?
No accident indeed. Yes. She must have been at, you weren't even at my talk at Content Marketing World. I believe that one of the things when you look at timing are conferences. You want to time your mega contest to coincide with whatever the big conferences are in your field, in your category. So, you know, for marketers, it's Social Media Marketing World, it's Content Marketing World, it's Inbound, it's Marketing Profs, it's a number of social ones like MozCon and PubCon, right? Those are the ones you want to coincide with, because why? Because not only are they mega content sites, they're great for, they work on content creation at every level. So it's not just a matter of wanting to make sure that if possible, you can be a speaker there. So that's one. 2, you learn who the influencers are because they've already told you, right? You go and look at who's speaking there, fill up your social media follows, and you know who to follow in your field. Then, even better, you know what the hot topics are because they're telling you these are our, here's our tracks, here's the topics. Boom, you don't even have to do it. Best example of conference content is Lee Oden's Top Ranked team does a, works with Content Marketing World, and they do an ebook every year. Now, from a solopreneur's perspective, you can't necessarily do that ebook. You can take advantage of trying to be a speaker. You can follow the influencers, and you can figure out what to write for content around those topics. Also, you can follow the hashtag even if you don't attend and figure out how to participate that way. But take a page from Lee Oden, who is the king of epic curated content, and he does this with the whole team. Okay. That said, they watch what they do with the content. Okay. So Lee and his team, yes, they present. Lee has been running his blog for 14 years. It's hard to get to the point where he's at now. And this epic curated content has been done for 5+ years. And the second year that they did it, I think he got an award for it. But look what they do. When they're creating the content, they create in-depth interviews with key people, right? Boom, reuse. They republish it. They're great at reaching out to the people who are involved and get them to more than once go back and get them involved in the content, not only content creation, but the content amplification and distribution. That is where many solopreneurs fall down. And if I could, I know I've been talking too long. So that answers your question.
This is great. No, this is
go on as an added piece to what you're mentioning. So here's the thing I saw in the stream of hashtag social ROI is the fact that your solopreneur sat there and go, oh my God, I have to do all this. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right? I'm dying. I have time. I need time for me. I need time for my kids. Oh, yes, you're a Lego maniac. Okay, but here's the thing. Planning works. You know, find any mother you know. She's the queen of organization because she doesn't have the time not to be. So when you're thinking about this, I don't have time, not planning ahead, make sure you have your consistent content. You look at what these people help you. You don't have to go it alone, right? And let me tell you, there are people who start their careers. For solopreneurs, this is really key. When you look at conferences, figure out how you are beg, borrow, or steal a way to get there. If you can't afford the conference, volunteer and be there.
Yep.
Hand out, be a guide or somebody on the inside, because then you become part of a team. One, you become part of their team. Two, you get to see people. Three, you get access to all the other stuff. And figure out before you go what your list is of what kind of content am I going to create? Who do I want to meet? How am I open to whatever else is going to happen? But if you're you're a solopreneur, you've got to pay yourself first, right? You've got to create that consistent content. You've got to show up and you've got to be available.
I love this. This is great.
Right. Here's the problem, right? Like when you work for a big company, you don't have to worry. Oh, no problem. It's Monday. Right. Oh God, you get to the office. Let's have a few coffees. Time for a coffee break. Let me get a croissant, whatever. Okay. I love Paris. What could I say? But when you work for yourself, you get up and it's like, oh, I gotta get the coffee. Oh, yeah, I gotta start writing a blog post. Oh my God. Well, let me tell you, you can do it. Take a page from Andy Crestodina. He just issued the fifth write-up. I'm not sure which version of his book. No pressure, right? He started to do this 6 months before his daughter was born. Talk about hard deadlines, right? And he already had a son. So he got up and he worked on the content from 5 to 7. And by the way, he got up, he had time with his wife, his son, and then he went to a job where he creates tons of content and thought leadership at Crestodina on Twitter.
Yeah. He's
I'm
a great guy.
fan too.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? Go.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, this is fun. Question number 5, because this kind of goes into the whole mega content, which you touched on a little bit before, but now we can dive a little further in. So, question 5, you make a distinction between mega content and consistent content. Can you define these terms and explain why they matter to solopreneurs?
Okay, so I make a distinction. So I've already talked about consistent content. That's your weekly or cyclical content. For a great example of how to do consistent content that's not an email, check out Spin Sucks, managed by Ginny Dietrich. She's a queen of different kinds of content. So she does, for her consistent content, she now has broadened it to a chat that happened where they pull out information from one of her Slack groups. And she also does Gin and Topics on Saturday, where she gets people to promote, tell her which are the best videos. Okay, so that's consistent content. The key here for consistent content is to build a communications channel. It means that people want and actively seek, and so they actively seek, consume, and do something with your content. Boom. Really simple. Okay, and it's easy because it's usually formatted. Just as you have Anne's emails or my emails, so look at Ginny does a great job with how she does a little blurb, has a consistent visual, and 5 or 6 videos. Okay, so mega content, that's slightly different. Okay, so mega content is is a combination of what I actually have 5 types of content, but I don't like freaking people out. So we got down to two. We can always do two eyes, right? Anyhow, 2 ears, right? Okay, mega content. So there's 2 types of mega content. This is bigger content, takes more effort. So it's what I call consists of 2 things. Usually what I call foundational content. People like Brian Clark of Copyblogger call it pillar content. So these are the big pieces of information around key topics that you want to be known for. And that's part of why that's important. This is where you put your stake in the ground. Here's how you have to do what Andy Crestodina calls niching down so that it's only you. And I know that it's not you, but that business or solopreneur's identity is associated with it. One of the best types of foundational content that's consistent, I say foundational content you should do 1 to 4 times per year. Research, which has become very high, but but if you're doing research, that's a whole nother huge conversation. So, right. But the research is one type. The other type is what I call crowd pleaser content. And those are roundups, they're research, There, you can say 100 data points on whatever. So those are big pieces of content, and your goal here is to, as with foundational content, is to reach a broader audience. That's why there's two types. They have very different functions. Consistent content is just to open that channel. It's non-promotional. It keeps your name there. People want it. It's easy to write. It's in your voice, and it sets you apart. And here's the thing that's really critical here is that you want to make sure that that works for you on a regular basis so people can tell what it is. Mega content is going to put your stake in the ground, reach a broader audience, and you need the two of them because otherwise you're going to be paying, right? We don't want to pay somebody. Although today's marketing, social media does require paid to augment or organic, but I wasn't going there.
Yeah.
Over to you. I'm sorry, I could.
No, this is great because I'm just taking it all in. I know you're like the star attraction here, sharing all this stuff. I mean, we could talk all day about this. There's like so much to talk about when it comes to this topic. One question I have for you, and to wrap this up, what kind of tools are out there that we should be using when it comes to content creation?
Oh, you're not going to like my answer on that.
Oh,
my favorite tool is, let's see if I have one here.
A pen.
Yes.
Is it going to be paper? Pen and paper?
Yes, I was trying to find a clean piece of paper.
I love pen and paper. You know what? My desk is covered with Post-it notes. I do a lot of
great, but here's the thing. So yes, I am. I must say that Ian Cleary of Razor Social once gave me a hard time because when he did a roundup on favorite content creation tools, and I said pen and paper. And he's like, "No, Heidi, no." Hashtag fail. No, he said we need a tool. So I said, okay, I guess we have WordPress. I guess we have Google Docs. I guess we have, but there are a lot of tools. So in today's thing, I would actually say Mr. Google or the Google, as our former president used to say, the Google, because you need it for your research. BuzzSumo, again, for your research.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, Ask the Public, which is now owned by Neil Patel, gives you ideas. Okay, so there are those. Two, you're going to need visuals because you've got to create content. Okay, and that's a whole another conversation. But once you create that conversation, it needs media. So you have an intro, right? This is old fashioned. I think this is from one of the Greeks. You have beginning, middle, and end.
Yep.
Okay, it's not anything new. So you've got your beginning. The middle consists of 3 to 5 points. I like 5. Why? I don't know. It's data. So, and each point has a piece of data. It has a visual. It has a headline. It has an influencer call out or something, and some tips that make it your own. Boom. And then you outline those 5 points. Makes it easy to highlight. Each one of those images is shareable. Each one of those quotes is shareable. Each one of the data points is shareable. Great. It now helps you do all of those things. Okay. And then what are we going to use? We're going to use some social media tools, right? We can then use Buffer, Hootsuite, Agorapulse, CoSchedule, any of those to make sure you get it.
Flutter.
Manage Flutter. Oh, we forgot. We're going to manage Flutter.
I love that. Yeah. What do you think of Medium? You know, that people were talking about Medium during.
So here, I did have an addendum. They beat me to the punch. Anyhow, sorry about that French there. But anyhow, here's the thing. One of the ways to extend your content has a lifetime value, right? Just for your business. So once you start it, you're going to you're going to do what I call ignite the distribution. Then you're going to keep fueling it to keep it going. And lastly, you're going to spread it. You're going to keep it going. And so during that part where I call it the spread, which is the last one, you're going to figure out which content you're going to look and tell. It's not like Heidi Cohen says magically, this is the best content. Rather, you are going to be able to tell which are the best ones. You're going to look at your Google Analytics. You're going to look at your social media. You're going to see what resonates with people. Then once you've done that, you then go back, just like the example I used from Buffer, you're going to take your best content and give it new life. And the key here is not, I'm sorry, there were people on the chat who kept using the word repurpose. I'm not a big fan of the word
saw
republish.
that, yeah.
But I didn't,
Repurpose, yeah.
Repurpose. I like the word, I want you to transform, because transform feels like a phoenix. It's
I like that,
opening up,
yeah.
right? So that it gives you new outlets. And one of the ways to do that is by republishing. Lots of people use Medium and or LinkedIn publishing just to syndicate their content. They did no work. They changed the headline, changed the image, a link to the original. I like waiting at least 2 weeks to do it. Larry Kim would say, and matter of fact, Larry Kim would say that you don't want to put all of it there. I don't think it's him. I think it's WordStream would say that. Larry Kim would say, if you're going to do this, and because I saw some comments that there were members of the chat who did not want to, they were afraid because they had nobody on their content.
I saw that. Yeah, they were concerned
about.
So
what you do is take what Larry Kim has said on this topic is that you tap into, just like you would use guest post, you tap into someone who has a better sense of it than you do. Who, not a better sense, excuse me, wrong word. Who has an established following.
Right.
Right. So therefore, you're going to use that. It's a win-win, just like a guest post would be.
Absolutely. I like that.
So that to me is part of your fuel, not your amplification. Amplification is true. That takes your blog post and you just publish it elsewhere. That works particularly if you're a solopreneur and all you're doing is the email newsletter. You probably need to do some blog posts to at least establish your home base. And I would say at a minimum, you want to do one every 2 weeks. And then you can actually use that content can be repurposed better than a newsletter can. Okay. And then to that point, one of the things that's become bigger is using a video snippet. I think Andy Crestodina has a great video about how to do that because that attracts the attention, draws people in.
I love it.
Social media.
This is great information. Well, I mean, again, we could talk all day about this. It's such a great topic of discussion, but unfortunately, all great things have to come to an end. What's the best way for people to reach out? I'm going to post your Twitter.
You do on Twitter. What I would really appreciate is if people go on my site and sign up for my newsletter. That would be cool. We love, as a matter of fact, because I would think of the content. I use my newsletter. Here's how I use it. I use my email newsletter not only to give people a unique piece, but as well, unique content that doesn't appear elsewhere. But I also highlight the content, the articles from the last week, as well as any place else that people find, anywhere else that somebody has mentioned me. So if it's it's HP. Well, that one works.
I just grabbed what was on your Twitter.
Oh, so, no. I guess I have to update my Twitter.
So what's the link?
https://HeidiCohen.com.
Okay. I just grabbed what was on your Twitter. But
my God, so many things to take care of.
Yeah, here we go. HeidiCohen.com. Isn't that great that you have your name.com? I love it.
I've had it for a long time. I have been doing digital. I've been doing, first of all, personal fact, I've been doing social media for years. So the first time I got it, I had somebody gave it to me as a birthday present, and I've kept it going ever since.
Nice. That's great. Well, this has been awesome, Heidi. You shared so much stuff. I really appreciate your time today. I know everyone else did as well. So
here's me in my happy dance.
Yep. Yep. Happy dance time. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We'll be back next week with another great chat. So until then, we'll just see you out on Twitter. Bye, everybody.
Happy Twitter. Bye.